It cost us a lot to fill up the Zoom tank to get here. At least that's what Abdul tells me. Even Abdul is shocked by the gas prices right now and is griping about them. And also, Abdul is also a baby formula expert. We'll get to that in a second on Insiders. If you follow Abdul on Facebook, you know what I'm talking about. Brian Gaddy, Democratic Insider, joining Abdul Hakim Shabazz and myself for this segment. Baby formula gas, we'll get to that in a second. The legislature, though, is going back to work very briefly coming up this week, May 24th. This is usually the technical corrections portion of the session. It's really a continuation of what happened back earlier this year, where they make technical corrections. It's exactly what it says, except this year, Abdul, there's going to be a vote to override a big veto from the governor regarding the trans athlete bill and the banning of transgender girls from competing in girls' sports in Indiana. I think we all pretty much know how that vote's going to go.
Yes, and basically the thing about technical corrections day is like you just said, it's just to make technical corrections in bills and in legislation. Now the criteria is the bill had to be introduced and it had to have passed in order to make technical corrections. So folks who are wanting lawmakers to deal with the gas tax issue, which you know we'll talk about, or property tax assessment, that is not going to happen because lawmakers do not have the legal authority to handle those issues on technical correction day. They come back for a special session, but that's different than just technical correction day. So that's kind of point number one. Point number two, it is very likely the House will override the governor's veto. And if they do, then the Senate will more likely go along as well. I think if that veto is overwritten, I would expect a lawsuit to be filed by the ACLU within a couple of days, if they're not already to go, and to file and have an injunction put on this legislation, because courts have ruled in favor of transgender students across the country, and I don't see Indiana being any different.
Brian, Democrats obviously are going to try to make some hay of this when this veto is overridden and the lawsuit is filed, and you're going to try to make Republicans pay a price at the ballot box later this year. Question is, how is that going to happen? I mean, certainly they saw the writing on the wall when the Religious Freedom Restoration Act and all of that went down several years ago when Mike Pence was still governor. Can Democrats, in your opinion, do the same thing and turn that kind of attention onto this issue regarding trans athletes?
It's just another sign, Ray, that the Republican Party, the Indiana Republican Party, is now captive to the culture warriors. And it's no longer a pro-business party. It's no longer a party that's about expanding economic opportunity in this state. And I will add that the jobs and the economic growth of this state has not just been a Republican-only issue. We Democrats have helped with the economic growth of this state. But the point is that Republicans now are culture warriors, and the ones that are not are captive to those culture warriors. So this override is just another example of the culture warriors. They truly call the tune in the Republican Party, and the other Republicans are just too scared of them to even stand up to them. So it's just really sad that they're not standing up to the culture warriors in their party. It really is.
Oh, with all due respect, my good friend, Mr. Gadd, I just want to let you know, while I'm not in favor of the legislation, there's very broad support for it amongst Democrats as well, because it's a very simple argument to make, is that if you're a guy, you should not be participating in girls' sports. It's a very simple argument, it's a very easy argument to make. Is it a fair argument? Is it an ethical argument? I would not necessarily say so. But it's very easy for people to get their arms around saying girls should play girls' sports, boys should play boys' sports, and that's it.
Well, Bill, you yourself said it's a solution in search of a problem. So don't we have other things to worry about in this state that are more important?
No, yes, I agree. But I'm just saying, but the argument is very easy to make. And it's very easy for people to get their arms around. And that's something you have to understand, is when in politics, the easiest answer is the one that usually wins.
And that gets into the science of the thing, that a transgender girl is a girl, Brian, and Democrats, you can make that argument, but there are some people apparently that you're not going to convince that a transgender girl is a girl.
Well, my position on this is that we should not codify hate into law. That's my position. And like we've talked about before, this is a solution in search of a problem. We should not create a problem where there isn't one. And I don't believe the General Assembly of the great state of Indiana should be codifying hate into law. That's my position. And as a Democrat, I will never be for codifying discrimination into law. I just will not. And politically, I don't believe it's a political loser for us Democrats, but I do think what would be the biggest political loser is if we do not stand up for what we are and we don't stand up for our principles, and we just bend to the will and the fear of the Republicans using this as a wedge issue against us. We have plenty of wedge issues we can use against them. So That's my position on this.
Well, obviously, Abdul, Republicans wouldn't be pursuing this. The more mainstream portion of the Republican Party would not be, pushing this vote and be okay with it if they thought they were going to pay a political price.
Exactly. And also keep in mind, too, a lot of this legislation popped up early on in the session. A lot of Republicans thought they're going to have primary challengers, and a lot of them did. A lot of those primary challengers actually lost. Let's say the incumbents had like a 90% victory rating. So like I said, I don't necessarily agree with the legislation. So don't get me wrong here. What I am saying is that it's a very simple, very easy argument to make. It's very easy for regular people who are not in our bubble to get their arms around. Girls play girls sports, boys play boys sports. It's a very easy argument to make. Now, like I said, whether it's the right argument to make, that we can have the debate, but it's very easy, very simple for average regular folks to get their arms around. Like, hey, what's a boy running track against a girl? Because men are, physically stronger than women are. So it's just that simple.
Well, it's really not that simple, but if we were going into all of that, we would be here for the next 2 hours discussing it. So
I say 3.
There are 3 at least. So let's move on to an issue that they are not going to discuss on the 24th, and that is one that I guess some people think could come up, but it's not going to, as Abdul, you pointed out, and that is rescinding the state's tax on gasoline to help lower gas prices. Brian, let me start with you, because this is something that Democrats have been talking about for weeks now, and have gotten no push from Republicans, or have gotten no Republicans, including the governor, to go along with the idea.
That's because the Republicans are not for providing Hoosiers with relief at the gas pump. We Democrats are. It's just simple as that. We know it's not, this suspension of the gas tax would not be permanent, it'd just be temporary, just to provide Hoosiers some relief at the gas pump until these gas prices come down. And I don't know, and you talk about political losers. To me, that should be a political loser for the Republicans, because when you go to the gas pump and you put that gas pump into your gas tank of your car, you should know it's the Indiana Democrats who are with you, who want to reduce those gas prices. We want to stand with you. And the party who's opposing you getting any relief at the gas pump are the Indiana Republicans. So you talk about a simple argument or a simple political message. Try that one on for size, Abdul. That's a simple message as well.
Before Abdul answers that, because I know what his answer is going to be, let me pose that question, Brian. That would naturally cost the state revenue. That revenue could go to road repairs, bridge repairs, which of course that needs to be done no matter how temporary the gas tax suspension is. Is that a liability, though, if you say, well, we're not going to fund these things? Yes, we're bringing you relief at the pump, but hey, your road might not get paved.
Well, we have all this money that we got from President Biden's infrastructure bill. So I'm sure the state could tap into that money to fill any kind of fiscal gap that could happen from the suspension of the gas tax. But the point I'm making again is that we need to stand with Hoosier drivers and to help them at this time where gas prices are just the highest we've seen in the last decade, or more than that, I'm sure. And again, this is something that's temporary, Abdul and Ray. It's not like it's something that we're saying, hey, suspend it for good. Just suspend it until prices come down. I don't see what's wrong with that.
Well, one, I guess we don't know when prices are going to come down. And 2, Abdul, as you will point out, yes, that revenue does go somewhere. And you call this, or if this did go into effect, you call it bad public policy.
Yes, for a couple of different reasons. Now, number one, please note there are 2 gas taxes that Indiana still levies. There's a regular gas tax on gasoline, and there's also the state sales tax on gasoline. So I think if you're going to possibly suspend something for a while, which would be the sales tax on gasoline, because the gas tax dollars actually go to the roads themselves, they go to roads, bridges, or infrastructure. The sales tax on gasoline goes into the state's coffers, just like all sales tax revenue. So if my Democratic friends want to talk about suspending something, it should be maybe perhaps the sales tax on gasoline, and perhaps use some of the $6 billion revenue surplus to go ahead and fix that, to replace that revenue. But once again, though, you got to remember when the gas tax goes to roads, bridges, and infrastructure, and if you're going to suspend those dollars, the question is going to be, how are you going to replace them, number one? Number two, do you actually cause gas prices to go up because you've got more dollars chasing a limited commodity, which is gasoline? And please note, high gas prices are just like property tax assessments. It's all simple supply and demand. There's a ton of money rolling around out there, and demand is up, but there's not a whole lot of gasoline. So therefore, we get high gas prices. You're probably better off just rotating your tires, getting that crap out the back of your car, and taking care of your vehicles. That'll give you more mileage. Well, it'll help you at least get through some of the high gas prices that we have right now.
I had a nickel for every time Abdul has told me to air up my tires on this show. But be that as it may, Abdul, why don't Republicans? Why doesn't the governor and the Republican leadership want to use some of that massive surplus, that massive budget surplus that we have right now to provide either relief in the form of funding if we did suspend gas taxes, or relief in any form? Why don't they want to touch that surplus?
Well, like I said, my belief is they are looking at probably ways to provide Hoosiers with relief at the pumps. And also, by the way, too, please keep in mind that my Republican friends legislature actually cut income taxes to provide Hoosiers with immediate income tax relief, and also the automatic tax refund as well. So Republicans have a history of actually cutting taxes and providing Hoosiers with the relief that they need. Like I said, I would not be surprised if the governor, Senate president, House speaker were having discussions, not the moment as we report this, but having discussions about how can we provide Hoosiers with relief for the pump. And my money is that if they're going to look at something, they're going to look at the state sales tax on gasoline, because that is not dedicated to roads and infrastructure, unlike the gas tax itself.
And I want to circle back to something you said earlier about how this is a supply and demand issue, whether that's gas prices, whether it's property tax assessments, because we've all gotten our property tax assessments recently, and they've gone way up as well. You said it's a supply and demand issue. Why then are we talking about politically blaming somebody? I just heard Representative Bouchon blame President Biden for high gas prices nationwide. We have Democrats here blaming Republicans for not wanting to bring prices down via the gas tax. Why is this a political football if it is a supply and demand issue?
Because it's a very easy political football, Fred. It's Occam's razor. Some days the simplest explanation is exactly what it is. And gas price is something we all feel, whether you're rich or poor, whether you're in business or work for yourself, or you're taking your kids to school. Everybody feels high gas prices, and somebody wants to blame someone for it, as opposed to just good old simple supply and demand. Now, you could probably make an argument at the federal level that because we limited drilling in certain places, that is sort of given the oil companies the excuse to drive gas prices up. But also got to remember too, we're still driving. Matter of fact, demand is up, which is why gas prices are up, because we were locked down for so long. People want to sort of get out of the house and go travel and go do things. And so that does not surprise me at all that gas prices are through the roof. And politics is politics. So we got to find somebody. Everybody's got to have a bogeyman. For Democrats, it's Eric Holcomb. For Republicans, it's Joe Biden.
Well, if everybody's got to have a boogeyman, Brian, is this going to be the Democrats' boogeyman midterm elections again? Unless the governor and legislative leadership come back with some sort of relief, are Democrats going to say, hey, we want to lower gas prices, here's how we want to do it, and Republicans don't?
No, like I said earlier, when you go to the gas pump and you're paying those high gas prices, know which party stands with you to lower those prices and which party doesn't. The Indiana Democratic Party, we are for lowering your gas prices. We Hoosier Democrats. The Hoosier Republicans are not, period. Simple argument.
Speaking of supply and demand, very quickly, let's talk about the baby formula shortage, which there are some signs it's going to be alleviated soon. This plant that's been closed in Michigan is reopening. That, of course, triggered a whole lot of things. We have a lot of laws that had banned essentially the import of baby formula from other countries. That's being alleviated by the federal government right now. But at the same time, as we said, it's politics, it's midterm year, Abdul, and naturally, Republicans are trying to tie the baby formula shortage to the Biden administration and Democrats.
It's a bit of a stretch to do that, but the Republicans do have a point. So I want to say the FDA sort of knew about this shortage like months before it actually happened and didn't sound the alarms or anything. So from that perspective, I think the Biden administration is to blame. But when it comes to things like baby formula, it's like, well, like I said, it's one thing that affects a lot of people, a lot of new moms, a lot of older moms. And so from that perspective, I can see why, once again, baby formula is sort of the issue du jour of the day.
Brian, how do you think Democrats have addressed this issue? If the Biden administration's FDA was at least partially at fault for not seeing this coming early on, how would you grade the administration's response so far and Congress's response, because they're trying to get legislation through there as well?
I would grade President Biden's response and Congress's response with an A. I mean, I think we've done a great job trying to alleviate this problem. But it goes back to Abdul's point about politics. Republicans blame President Biden for everything. So regardless of what he would do, they would find a reason to blame him for it. So I think he's doing a great job in trying to get this issue under control. No doubt about it.
And in the same token, my Democratic friends here in Indiana blame Eric Holcomb for everything. So if Eric Holcomb were to walk on water, Democrats say, look, he can't swim. So there we go.
I'm going to steal that one.
We don't blame Eric Holcomb nearly as much as Republicans blame Joe Biden. Come on, Abdul, you know that.
Oh, well,
Republicans blame Joe Biden for everything, and I mean everything.
my email inbox from Drew Anderson at the Democratic Party might say otherwise, but we'll leave that doesn't pay because Drew's not here to defend himself.
They have a slogan called "Let's Go Brandon." We don't have one saying "Let's Go Eric."
Our political insiders, Brian Gaddy, Abdul Hakim Shabazz. Always a pleasure, gentlemen, and we'll talk to you next week.
Hey, always good to be here, old friend.
Thank you, Ray.